Stelliums. Today we're talking about stelliums in the natal chart, and I'm going to tell you all about what they mean based on what house they're in. A few things to know about stelliums. Number one, there is an argument among astrologers about whether a stellium is 3 planets in a sign or 4 planets in the sign. And my official opinion is I don't care, but I'm going to tell you why they say this and why this is why I think that's debated. And the reason is, in astrology, Mercury and Venus are always going to be pretty close to the sun in the chart. So even though they go around the whole sun from our position, right, from the Earth's position, Mercury can only be one sign before the same sign or the sign after the sun at any given moment. Venus can only be 2 signs before the same sign or 2 signs after the sun. So when we're thinking of 3 planets that we see in the same sign all the time, Venus, Mercury, and the sun are the ones. So it might be possible that the reason why astrologers don't call 3 planets in a sign a stellium is because you're going to see Venus, Mercury, and the sun together often. Stelliums are pretty common, but they still do have a strong emphasis on a chart because what happens is a lot of energy is put into one house. Now that can be good or it can be bad, depending. So whether the stellium functions in a more positive way or more challenging way is going to depend on which planets are in it, right? So when we have like Jupiter, Venus, the sun, even Mercury and the moon, usually we're going to say that's probably a good stellium. If we have Mars and Saturn involved, or Pluto, or even Uranus can kind of mess things up a little bit. Neptune and Uranus can even mess things up sometimes. Then, it might not be quite so happy. So of course with a stellium, you can always look at each of the individual planets and see what they mean, and probably even Google it and see what is Mercury. If you have, let's say you have a Leo stellium, what is Mercury in Leo? What does the sun in Leo mean? What does Venus in Leo mean? But then you will come to a point where you can no longer Google. And because in order to be able to really break down a stellium, you need to be able to understand what each of the planets in the stellium does to the other planets, right? So if you have Mercury, Venus, Sun in a stellium and Saturn's there, well, Saturn's going to make it be about how it's hard to do those things, how it's hard to shine the light of the sun, how it's hard to communicate or communicating in a very serious way. There's going to be a totally different tone depending on which planets are there and what they're doing to each planet. But today, that's why you should book a reading. But today we're going to talk about what it means to have a stellium in the houses 1 through 12. If you have a first house stellium, your life is going to be about how you come across, what impact you're making on other people. What is your first impression? Some people, let's say your 10th ruler is in the first house. Well, then you might actually do brand deals or be the face of a brand. Some people with first house stelliums, they're going to almost play a character or play a role in life. And they're going to want to show up as that character. The first house is you, your body, and how you're coming across. So this is like a person who is a character on a TV show that they become known for. And they are not that character, but they're known for becoming that character. That's kind of what I see as a first house stellium, is what personality are you bringing to the world? How are you influencing people? And someone with a first house stellium is going to be more aware of how they come across, more concerned with how they come across, and maybe just have more energy on how they make a first impression on people. And so depending on which planets are there, this can go a bunch of different ways. What kind of character are you? Are you a happy teddy bear character? Are you a goth sad character, right? It's going to be totally different. But what character are you playing? What's your role in the world? And it almost is like an actor energy when I see a first house stellium. Second house stellium means money, money, money is going to be one of the major focuses of your life. Does it mean you'll be rich? Maybe, maybe not. It could be that you spend your life solving problems in that house. It could be that you are focusing on how you don't have enough money, you need to make it. It could be that you are selling things, right? Because the second house rules possessions. It rules what we have and what we own. And sometimes people with strong second houses will sell products. Usually it's products, or they're going to be focused on their ideas. Okay, the second house is also a house of your ideas, your very important ideas that are your opinions. So second house stellium people can also be very opinionated. But if you have a stellium in the second house, a huge theme in your life is going to be money. And now let's say you have planets in the 8th house. Well, then it's going to be my money versus other people's money. So even just the stellium itself isn't going to tell us everything. But what we know about that second house is it's what you have, what you own. And the second house is also your ability to focus in on something. And the 8th house, the opposite, would be the ability to zoom out, not zoom out, but focus out, share, and cooperate. So I'm not saying second house stellium people are bad or can't cooperate, but they might have some strong opinions and that's their way or the highway. You know, they might actually spend their time and energy focusing on getting their belief or their opinion out into the world and like sharing it with the world, or having a very fixed way of seeing things. So it's not good or bad. It's just the second house is like ideas, opinions, money, finances, and physical possessions. So depending on what planets are there, you know, this might be someone who has a shop and sells things. It might be someone who owns a bunch of cars and you know, polishes them. It could be something else. For the third house stellium, if you have a stellium in your third house, this is going to be communication. But it's not just communication, right? It's how do you communicate what you know? So if you have really nice, easy planets there, you might be communicating what you know all the time. If you have challenging planets there, you might be figuring out how to solve the problem of not being able to communicate what you know. The third house also rules a bunch of other stuff. So there's other things, and everyone is going to be different. But some other things that third house stellium people might be doing is writing. You might be writing. You might be putting pen to paper. The act of writing is in the third house, especially repetitive daily little tidbits of writing. That's going to be in the third house. In the 9th house, we see publishing. We see big bodies of work, books. We'll talk about that when we get to the 9th house. But the difference is that the writing and the communicating that we see in the third house is the repetitive everyday. It's writing a song and then writing another one and then writing another one, or writing a poem and then writing another one and then writing another one. Whereas the 9th house is like writing a whole damn book, you know, and then publishing that. So the third house can be writing. It's also elementary school. So it's possible some people with third house stelliums could have something in their life that focuses them on elementary school. It could be that a lot of things happen in your life during elementary school. And it can also be that some third house people might be teachers, but usually we need to see other very specific things in order to say elementary school teacher, not just third house stellium. Okay. So if you have a third house stellium, your part of your focus in life is going to be on how you communicate what you know. And do people receive it? Do people hear you? There also might be stuff with siblings with the third house stellium, because the third house rules your siblings, and it might be good experiences with siblings and lots of energy on that, but it could also be challenges with siblings and figuring out how to resolve those challenges. Now on to the 4th house stellium. If you have a 4th house stellium, you're like me, because so do I. And people with 4th house stelliums are going to be really, really focused on family and home. But it doesn't always guarantee that you had a wonderful family and you fit in. Sometimes the reason for the stellium is the learning how to deal with whatever family means to you. Sometimes it's about the need to break away from family and the ensuing psychological or emotional things that go on related to that. So it really depends. Some people with 4th house stelliums are going to be like, yes, my family means so much to me. I run the family business or something. Others are going to be like, oh, family. You know what I mean? So it's going to depend on which person. Also, the 4th house is our intuition, and it's our emotions, it's our emotional foundation. So people with 4th house stelliums can also find that they spend a lot of time at home by themselves or their homebodies, or that they are good in or care about those deeper conversations about feelings and emotions and want to hear how people are really doing. Sometimes you can really be the confidant for people when you have lots of fourth house planets, because they'll want to tell you how they feel, or you'll care about how they feel. And, there's a depth. There's an emotional depth usually with fourth house people, and a desire to spend time in that house, right? So spend time with emotions, whether they're yours or other people's. Going on to the fifth house. If you have a fifth house stellium, this could indicate, it doesn't indicate you're going to have kids. It describes, if you do have kids, what it will be like. And it also describes your creative potency. So if you have lots of good planets in the fifth, you might be a very creative person. You might love to create, and the creative can be anything, right? It can be creating food, it can be creating art, it can be creating songs, it can be building furniture, right? Any kind of creative hobby where you are generating ideas that emanate from yourself and using your life force energy to put something out into the world. Self-employment also goes in that fifth house for that reason. You are creating a thing and putting it out into the world, a product or service. So the fifth house is also things like pleasure, fun, entertainment, dating, and gambling. So some people with fifth house stelliums might just have quite of an active dating life. And again, remember, the stellium doesn't mean that area of life goes easily. Sometimes it will be you spend a lot of time solving fifth house problems, like having trouble dating, or dating people and then feeling like they're not the right people, or making creations and then forgetting about them, or like, what else could you do in the fifth house? Gambling, having a gambling problem. Or it's possible with the fifth house you could have other problems related to pleasure seeking, but to me the fifth house is a little more fun. It's a little less about like an ability to handle fun. It's usually enjoying life, and it's usually you're going to be focusing on that, like focusing on playing with your kids if you have them, or focusing on something related to kids. Some people will have kids be a part of their life, but they're not their own. Or again, it doesn't have to be kids. It can be your creative energy. So people with fifth house stelliums, it's all about focusing in on what you want to birth into being in this life, and possibly overcoming the obstacles to be able to do that. Okay, sixth house stellium. The sixth house is all about your work, your health, and also solving problems. So one of the things I see with sixth house stellium people is they want to be of service. They want to help others. They want to be useful. And if you have like Pluto here, you're going to be obsessed with personal development. Most people with sixth house planets want to get better at a craft. They want to be good at things. They'll spend their time perfecting things, or they'll work a lot, or they'll have a lot of chores to do, or they'll take care of others. Sometimes they're in the nursing field or something because that caretaking ability shows up in their work. Sometimes they just work. If you have a lot of planets in the sixth house, that means you're always doing stuff. It means you're probably not lazy. You're probably always taking care of something. What are you taking care of? Maybe it's something more like a labor of love, like you have a new deck on your house and now you want to put a pool in, and there's always a chore to be done, but it's like these are chores you're choosing to have and you want to have them. Maybe it's taking care of a family member or something. So sixth house stellium people, a lot of the theme in their life is about being of service, helping others, and solving problems. Okay, seventh house stellium people, doesn't guarantee you'll always be in a relationship. This is kind of lazy astrology, so don't think that. Sometimes people with seventh house stelliums have had challenges in relationship that makes them not want to have anymore, right? Because it matters so much to them that it's like they don't want to keep going through it, whatever it is. But seventh house stellium people tend to really have a relational focus in life. It's all about the other people. And that doesn't mean it can't be about them, but that their life is going to be more about who their friends are. Like let's just compare seventh house versus the first house stellium person is like, this is the impression I want to make on the world. The seventh house person is like, this is who I'm with in life. I'm with this person. I'm with this person. And so usually they're going to put more importance on relationships. And some of that importance could be because of relationship challenges that they're trying to solve. Now, the seventh house isn't always just marriage. Sometimes, like if you're married, the seventh house describes your partner. If you're single, the seventh house, you're still going to have transits to that seventh house, right? So there's still something going on. What is it? It's other people. So it's possible someone could have a really packed seventh house, not be married, not have a significant other, and have one or more very, very close friends that seventh house describes. Okay, so that's one thing to know. But if you have a seventh house stellium, your life is about who you're with, and that's going to be really important to you, and either expressing that energy or solving problems related to relationships is going to be something you spend a lot of time and energy on. Eighth house stellium. This one, now we're getting into the interesting stuff, because the eighth house is complicated, which means I'm going to rattle off a bunch of stuff, but it might not be all those things. It might just be one of those things. So the eighth house stellium is going to be about, number one, other people's money, right? Whose resources, mine or yours? And sometimes those planets are you paying for other people. Sometimes it's other people paying for you. It just depends on what planets. Sometimes if there are challenging planets, it's challenges like paying a shitload of child support or something. Like those kind of problems, or having like an ex who just kills you in the divorce. I mean, not really kill, but you know what I mean? For some people, it's that. For other people, it's your ability to garner the resources of other people. So that's going to be like being able to get grants, being able to get loans, or to handle other people's money, like working in finance, working in real estate, not real estate, but like, what's it called? Accounting. What is wrong with me? Accounting and stocks, investing, money that is sometimes the eighth house is also self-employment. Sometimes people with very, very strong eighth houses, like lots of planets here, they will invest large sums of money, and then they will lose some of it, and they'll gain some of it, So the eighth house can absolutely just be simply you work with other people's money. You work with the topic of money and investing. Goes beyond just like selling, right? It's not the second house of I sell things and people give me money for them. It's I put money in these places and then it makes money, or things that are more complex related to interest and loans and accounting and things like that. So it's taxes, it's stuff like that. But it's also the occult and the other side of the veil. So some people with packed eighth houses are going to have psychic abilities. So that's part of it. Also, the eighth house is also intimacy. So people with really strong eighth houses can connect with other people in ways that are very usually powerful. And even sometimes if you have challenging planets in the eighth, that indicates that you've had to overcome some kind of psychological thing. But usually it also means you have a gift or a capacity to handle it when other people come to you with their psychological challenges. So if you have good planets in this eighth house stellium, people give you good stuff. If you have bad planets in this eighth house stellium, people come to you with their problems. They come to you with their baggage. They come to you with their conflict. Okay, so either way, sometimes there's trust issues. If you have like Mars or Saturn or Pluto in the eighth, that's going to be trust issues usually that you have a reason for. And overcoming those is going to be just part of your life process or dealing with that. Because the eighth house is when you get to know someone else really well. And what happens when you get to know people really well? If bad things happen when you get to know people really well, that creates trust issues. So that's where that kind of comes from in my perspective. So eighth house can be a bunch of stuff. It's like, I always say it's the house of sex, death, and other people's money. So the intimacy of shared resources, the intimacy of sex, the intimacy of just deeply knowing people, being able to mash souls with people, that's all going to be eighth house stuff. Ninth house stellium. This one's really nice compared to the eighth. Sorry, eighth house people. So the ninth house stellium is all about traveling afar, going abroad, higher knowledge, higher learning, higher education. So some people with ninth house stelliums are going to travel. And it's going to just be that, getting away from your local environment in the third house. Others might publish something. Others might do spiritual work or focus on learning spirituality. And some people will have higher education, like they'll get a degree in something. If you have problem planets here, maybe you can't get a degree. Maybe you struggle getting a degree. If you have Saturn here, maybe you have to go to college and then stop, and it goes really slow, because you can only get like a little bit at a time. If you have like Pluto here, people with Pluto in the ninth, if you travel abroad, you're going to have some stories. Stories. What else do we have? Ninth house. Oh, if you have like Mercury in the ninth, it's going to be like you'll want to work at a library just because you love knowledge so much. Doesn't mean you will, but like, it's like that kind of energy. Venus in the ninth, great for spiritual stuff, like spiritual awakening, or every time you learn something spiritual, it builds on each other. And it's just like this lovely, like it settles on your soul and it makes you happy. So other ninth house things are like the law. So people can be lawyers or judges or stuff. If you have like Mars in the ninth, maybe you're a police officer defending the law. Usually that's only if it rules the 10th house though. And then astrology goes in the ninth house. Not everyone with ninth house planets are astrologers or vice versa, but it is in the ninth house, that quest for more, that higher education, that higher knowledge. It's the quest in life, the quest for meaning and fulfillment. And sometimes that quest is going to be fulfilled by going across the world and finding God somewhere at a temple. Sometimes it is going to be fulfilled by just traveling, just getting that experience of adventure and far off wisdom and information through learning or education. So the ninth house doesn't have to be spiritual though. It can be education that is simply a topic of interest. You could be a professor in anything and have ninth house planets. You can be a learner, a PhD holder, or a BA, or a what's after BA? MA, master's holder in anything with ninth house placements, because it kind of indicates this is where you spent some time in your life, in the ninth house. Temples, colleges, universities, churches, and publishing or courthouses, that kind of thing. So 10th house is quite straightforward. But if you have a 10th house stellium, you're going to focus on your career. It's that simple. You're probably going to be more ambitious. You're probably going to be more career focused, more of your time and energy. This doesn't mean people without 10th house stelliums don't work. It just means that what's meaningful to you is going to be expressed in your job. Or that might not actually be true. You're going to spend more time in the 10th house, more focus on the 10th house. And depending on what it is, what that planet is, if it's Mercury, you're going to be talking for your job or communicating or sending emails. If it's Venus, you're going to be relational and relating to people and dealing with humans and how they feel, and maybe even aesthetics or art or something, et cetera, et cetera. So 10th house planets really do describe what you do at your job, what you're liking your career, the kinds of things you're doing. And the more planets you have in the 10th house, the more important your reputation is to you, and the more you're going to be willing to sacrifice how you feel in order to get to the top, whatever that means, or in order to do the job you do. And that we need people like that, So if you have, I'm trying to think of anything that could make the 10th house more interesting, but that's really it. Like, if your midheaven is in your 10th house, you have a planet on the midheaven, that planet is really more important to your career. Or if you have a planet, if you have a planet in its own sign in the 10th, that's a really significant key to something you'll be doing in your job. Okay, going on now to 11th house. An 11th house stellium is a good stellium to have because the 11th house is a good house. It is a very positive house. So lots of good things. Although if you have like Saturn or Mars, for all of these, that changes it and makes more challenges to overcome. But 11th house stellium, usually the 11th house is like our community, groups, the public. People with lots of planets in the 11th house do stuff with other people a lot. They do stuff with groups of people. They show up at events. They go to parties. They maybe work in groups. Maybe they teach in groups, or they work by facilitating groups, or need to do a certain amount of events for their job. Maybe they work with the public. Maybe they have a public image. So some 11th housers are like actors, or like they, not only are they actors, but like people who do their work in a group of people. Like they go to work and it's a group that does it. Like I think of like, I don't know, like imagine people who even like make music, right? And they like work in a recording studio. They're going to work with a group of people on a song at once, right? It's one group after another group. So you can work in groups without just teaching or something. So any kind of collaborative work, or any kind of work that does deal with a public image, like people who are actors or who have a brand or who have a certain image they need to uphold. Politicians sometimes will have like moon in the 11th because they can win over the crowd. The planets in the 11th will describe how you are in front of a crowd, but they'll also describe what your audience is like. So if you are a famous person, if you want to look at a famous person's audience, look at their 11th house and see what planets are there. So having planets in the 11th house doesn't guarantee fame, but it kind of does suggest that you're going to spend a little bit more time in that public domain of life. This could be as a social justice warrior, right? It could be because you care about your community and you're doing like community service and stuff, or it could be because you have a product or service that you want to, that you're like spreading to a big group of people or something. There can be so many ways because it's just the topic of public, right? So if you have an 11th house stellium, you're going to deal with people. If there are problem planets in the 11th house, then you might be overcoming stage fright, or like have, something like that, where sometimes it'll be the desire to do that thing, and then the challenge that ensues, the desire to sell your art and make it public, the desire to put something out in the world and let people see it, the desire to grow your social media and the ability to do that, the community that you have to support you in doing what you do. So if you have a lot of connections, then you're probably going to have some 11th house planets. So it's like your friends, your community. If you have like Venus or Jupiter in the 11th, it kind of means that there's at least someone in your community who's going to help you out, who's going to like be there for you, bring you blessings, or give you some kind of boost or some kind of support at some point in life. Okay, going on to the 12th house. The 12th is the last, but definitely not the least, and probably the hardest to describe. So if you have a 12th house stellium, just know that I will not do you justice, because there really is kind of a thing where only a 12th houser can understand another 12th houser, but I will do my best. The 12th house stellium means you need more time to yourself to figure out what the fuck is going on, because every single one of your planets that's in that house needs isolation to even have a clear idea of what's going on. If it's the moon, is your emotions. You need to isolate to be by yourself to figure out how you feel. If it's Mars, it's your anger. You need to be by yourself to figure out what pissed you off. Mars in the 12th, sometimes my example is like, you'll be around someone and you won't realize that you should have got mad until later, and you're by yourself and you're like, I should have got mad about that. Now we all can do that sometimes, but for someone with Mars in the 12th, it's going to be more pronounced. And so people with 12th house planets spend more time in 12th house places, which is prisons, jails, hospitals, ashrams, monasteries, retreats, their own meditation room at home. So pick which one of those you want to go to. I would say the meditation room is probably the best place. Also, I think of like 12-step programs, even though 12-step doesn't rule isolation, the 12th house rules self-undoing, right? It rules when we are working against ourselves. So sometimes people with 12th house planets will have experiences where they need to let go of habits that are self-defeating of any kind. Now, this does not mean that only 12th house people have bad habits, and, people who don't have 12th house planets have great habits. I've known many people, myself included, who have horrible habits or who have horrible, problems where they get addicted to anything and they don't have 12th house placement. So don't think of it as that cut and dry. Other significations, there is a spiritual component and a psychological component of the 12th house. The 12th house really to me means the things you don't see unless you look really hard. And what else goes there? Well, spirit guides, God, prayers, things that you can see, you only see like the God in things or the spirituality in things, the spiritual lesson if you look for it. Okay, so sometimes people with 12th house planets will have a desire to see beyond the obvious. We'll just naturally see like fairies or something when they're little, or naturally have spirit guides when they're young that they like have to block off because they get scared, or see angels or all kinds of things, or just have experiences with the more unspoken parts of life like that. I also think of the subconscious mind as the 12th house. So if you have a 12th house stellium, you might really be into hypnotherapy or RPP or RTT, whatever it's called. Just all those ways of like working with the subconscious and really understanding the way that our psyche works, because that's another thing that you don't see unless you look for it. So it can also be that you have experience with 12th house stuff, but you're not the one who has the affliction, right? So other things that can go in the 12th house are mental health. And like maybe you had parents who were in prison when you were young and you had experience with going to visit them. Or maybe you had a significant other who went to jail, or maybe your sibling, one of your siblings is in jail, or a sibling or a parent or another person in your life got sober, and that was an important part of your life. So let's say you have, and it's going to depend on which planet, right? So let's say you have your 4th house planet in the 12th. Well, one signification could be that your parents work against you, but it could also be that your mom or dad got sober when you were a kid, or later in life. Right? So whatever planet is in the 12th house, that person, whoever that represents in your life, could be a 12th house type person. So that could be someone in your life who has a true, real mental health issue. It could be someone in your life who is really, really spiritual. And I mean, that can be you, but the 12th house spirituality gives a little bit of a feeling of like, dark night of the soul, I'm at the end of my rope. I don't know what I'm going to do. Please help me. Invisible forces kind of a feeling than just like, oh, we're just so like deep. Although, yeah, that's kind of my feeling on it. But overall, if you have a 12th house stellium, isolation is your jam. Being by yourself, being able to connect with things that are beyond this world is your jam. And sometimes if you have a bunch of planets there, sometimes you might need someone or something to pull you out of that and remind you that this world, this 3D world we're in is still here. And we're still, no matter what your job is in the spirit realm, there's still some things to be done here on earth in that 6th house as well. So that's what I have for 12th house stelliums. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Also, check out my featured videos section of my website. I do these videos, and the one that's available right now is on masculine and feminine energy, and it helps you understand, what's wrong with your masculine and feminine, what might be messing it up, between your ability to take action and then know when not to act, to be able to get what you want and then receive it. If any of these areas are out of balance, we can look at what your chart says about your ability to do that. And they're only available through the 23rd of October. So click now to get yours. I hope to see you in one. And I will see you, beautiful souls, in the next video. Bye, guys.